No matter who you are, you've seen at least one of his movies, and he owns the Golden State Warriors and Los Angeles Dodgers. Peter Guber joins us for some supporters to thank. Thank you for listening. This episode is supported by CCW Digital. Leaders responsible for operations, information technology, contact centers, customer care, service, and support are invited to register for a free CCW Digital membership. Membership includes networking with 100,000 plus qualified industry professionals, quarterly executive research reports, product matchmaking, and more. Go to ccwdigital.com to join the community. This episode is also supported by the CCW Conference and Expo. The event will empower you to test, learn, and try the next big thing in customer experience optimization. Are you interested in mining data across touch points for personalized and predictive data? Are you trying to integrate your systems to get a more complete view of the customer? Are you figuring out what innovations to invest in? Chatbots, virtual assistants, AI, VR, biometrics, to name a few? Go to callcenterweek.com to register. Recorded at CCW, Peter Guber joins us and shares his experience being a film producer with the credits of Rain Man, Batman, 5 Easy Pieces, Easy Rider, and Midnight Express, among many others, as well as a professional sports team owner of the Golden State Warriors and Los Angeles Dodgers. He notes the difference of a passenger customer versus a participant customer. For a passenger customer, you have knowledge of the rules and context. For a participant customer, the content is different because you make a difference in the outcome. He notes that no matter your function in an organization, you're building a relationship with the customer, not a transaction. As far as Serendipity, any company that was there on the Wednesday that Peter interviewed could have had him, and it just so happened to be Columbia Pictures. Welcome to CCW on B2B IQ. I'm your host, Seth Adler. Download episodes on ccwdigital.com or through our app in iTunes, within the iTunes podcast app in Google Play, or wherever you currently get your podcasts. Peter Guber.
Shouldn't need to tell you, though. Peter Guber, right?
You can tell me. I'll listen, see what it has to say.
So, I guess let's just dive right in because we don't have a ton of time with you. How is the movie customer different than the sports customer? How about that?
Well, they both have butts and they both are in seat. But the difference is, of the butts, is the person that's in the movie theater is a passenger. And the person in the sports venue is a participant. And that's all the difference. You go to see Rocky today, and we know who wins. You go tomorrow, and we know who wins. Your son goes next month, we know who wins. If it's shown on the plane, we know who wins. If it's shown on a little tiny mini phone, we know who wins. When you go to any of the games anywhere, you don't know who wins. You have the certainty, like in a movie, of the rules and the players and the situation and the context. But the content is different because you are a participant. You think you make a difference in the outcome, and in fact you do. So that is the major difference between the audience for a movie and the audience for a live sporting event.
In fact, you do have a difference in the outcome?
Yes, you absolutely do. Look at the statistics. They'll tell you home field advantage, when you cheer for the team, builds up their emotional quotient and their involvement. And I think that participation has an impact. And you can ask the players that. You can ask commentators that. Sometimes the road record is better than the home record, so there's idiosyncratic elements. But in general, that's the way people own the team. Yeah. You don't own Rocky, but you own the Dodgers or the Warriors or the LA Football Club. You feel as a fan you own them. They're your team. You don't feel it's your Rocky.
Right. It's interesting to hear you say that me, the fan, owns the teams that you, in fact, actually own, right?
Yes, because really when you think about it, you're a steward for the team. You're renting it.
You are.
Yes,
Peter
you.
is.
You, the owner,
Right.
the manager,
Right.
the managing partners, the people that are involved with it. They're entrusted with that team in that city, in that geographic area, to bring their best interests and their best values and their economic resources to it to make it competitive and better. And the fans really own that franchise. You can see it in the newspapers and television and the podcasts and all the electronic media that follows it.
Yeah.
It's those folks are standing in the shadow of the whole audience of the people that call that team theirs. And you don't call, Rocky yours or Rudy yours. Or you don't call Wonder Woman yours. You won't go see my movie, but you go see my team.
Yeah, without question. So let's make sure that we understand. If, we've seen the headlines, we know what you do, and we know what you've done. Where are you from?
I'm from Boston.
Okay, and anybody that's been in the Northeast understands that you clearly have a Boston accent. Is that fair to say?
And I clearly owned the Red Sox, and I owned the Bruins, and I owned the Celtics growing up. They were my team.
They were.
And that emotion follows you even as you get older, and that's the basic difference because back in the day, when you moved, you really moved away from your home team, and players stayed with the team forever. They generally made their career there. That's very rare today.
Someone like Carl Yastrzemski, for instance.
Right, or Ted Williams, or whoever the players were, Kobe Bryant. So that was your team.
Yeah.
But now players move, and individuals, audiences move. A lot of geographical movement now, and most importantly, though, you can now get any game, any place, anytime. You can be in Tibet watching the Warriors.
Yeah.
And I was. So the idea is you now have a global audience who looks at the geography as not a limiting factor, but just a place, a site where they physically play.
As a fan, which you still are, and an owner, understanding these new dynamics, what is your point of view on loyalty? How has that changed if there are no players that stay with teams for more than a number of years?
Well, one might say you're loyal to laundry, the name on the
Seinfeld,
shirt,
absolutely.
But the reality is it's more than that. It's the narrative of that team and its experiences and your experience at the ballpark or the ice rink or the basketball court and the hardwood, your experience there with your family, your mom, your dad, your brother, your friends, that gestates and narrates inside you, and that marinates in a sense, and it becomes part of your life cycle, and you tell your story with those kind of pivots about being there and doing it and sharing that experience. So that's what really happens. You are attached to, your bond is to the brand.
Yeah.
More so than ever, not just to the geography and not just to past players, but to the legacy of that team.
Some of it is because of the emotion that happens, when I am rooting. However, if I'm a brand marketer, if I'm a brand executive, and I am, in fact, in charge of the laundry detergent,
right,
or the clothing that becomes the laundry,
right,
how do I instill that same type of loyalty? Is it possible?
Yes, it definitely is, because you're in the audience business. You have to be audience-centric when you manage, steward, or own those teams. You're building a relationship with your audience, not a transaction. It isn't buying a package of gum which you chew and spit out. This is part of your life, your shared experiences at the venue or on radio or on television or digital streaming, and that shared experience, emotional transportation that happens during that experience is what bonds you to that brand. It's a bond. Mm-hmm. The brand is just a piece of laundry or a shirt or a mark. It's the bond. It's that emotional connection that happens, which is through your emotional experience with that team, rooting for it, seeing it win, having the pain of loss, being able to talk about it. It's a language. It's franco-lingua for young people growing up. It's what they can share. Right. So I think that's part of the process. And if you don't understand that, you'll have trouble being a good steward.
There we go. Okay. As far as being a good steward, when did you realize that you doing something in the film business was possible? How early on?
Somewhere after my first year in the business.
Okay. So we went, grew up in Boston. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Syracuse undergraduate. Then I got my master's degrees and doctorate degrees at NYU.
Okay. And Syracuse, known for their communications. Is that what you got?
Yeah, but I had no communication there. I was a wannabe athlete, and I was a runaround guy, and it was during the Vietnam War, and it was a place to protect yourself from being killed.
By not being there.
Right.
Gotcha. NYU, you get your master's and doctorate in what?
In law, and master's in law, doctorate in law. I went to NYU Graduate School of Business, MBA, where I was recruited by Columbia Pictures to go to work there as their executive trainee.
It could have been, U.S. Steel.
Yes, anything that was on Wednesday when I was being interviewed, it could have been, and it really could have been. It was completely serendipitous that I ended up in Hollywood.
Yeah, and in fact it is. Are you confirming that?
It's true.
Yeah. All right. Meaning it's weird.
It's weird. Yeah. It's how likely serendipity is to play a part in your life. It's just, standing in the right place, the right moment. But you also have to recognize the opportunity, and then you also have to do something with it. Yeah. It's not as if, lightning strikes and turns you into Picasso. You know what I mean? You got to get the paint, and you got to get the canvas, and you got to have the talent, and you got to get the training, and you got to have the good fortune to have somebody recognize you. And so all those things the confluence of all those things makes success, no doubt. But be on the lookout for serendipity.
I got you. Be on the lookout for serendipity. I like it. A year in, you say, you realized that you could do something here. What was it? What was that inflection point?
Well, it was really quite simple. I was sitting around the table as the assistant to the head of the studio at that time, and I looked around the table, and there were 40 white male men.
You're one of them.
No, yeah, but they were men. I was a boy.
I got you.
And they were all over 60, and I was 25. So I figured, if I just be patient, gravity will work,
This will happen 30 or 40 years from now if I just am patient enough.
Yeah, it happened 2 years later, but the point was I recognized the time was on my side.
What happened 2 years later?
Well, the world changed in the way the film business was that time. We went from 45-year-olds playing teenagers to Easy Rider, and it changed the language of the film industry. And being young, being in my mid to late 20s, gave me a strategic advantage because they thought I must know something for this audience. Of course, I didn't. You
weren't going to tell them that.
Well, couldn't even tell me that. Forget them. But the point was, I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time, and that's part of it too.
Your serendipity is becoming a theme here. As far as your kind of big initial hits, or maybe your favorite hits in the film business, what were they, and why do you think that happened?
Well, I think probably I was always looking at themes that resonated with myself. The first audience for anything you choose, it has to be yourself, because there's only one pair of shoes you can stand in, and it's your own. You can have other reflections of other people, and you can observe and talk with other people and see what they think and believe and want, and you should. But basically, your congruence, your alliance and organization amongst your own internal self is the key to good decision making. Are your feet, tongue, heart, and wallet aligned? Are you willing to have skin in the game? Are you willing to be a participant or a passenger? Are you willing to be at risk? And if you can answer those questions reasonably effectively, you can apply that codec to your decision making. And so I looked at what films and stories were interesting to me, and looked at the audience out there and hoped and presumed that they'd be interesting to them. So I began making films, or designing films, or choosing films, or organizing the direction of films in that manner. And I think that alignment worked for me.
Okay, and the hits, let's just list them.
Well, it's not my hits. When you're at a studio, it's a lot of people who combine to make the decision, support the decision, and the filmmakers and producers and directors. But films like 5 Easy Pieces and films like Easy Rider was there when I was there as a young man. Films like Midnight Express, which I made. Lots of young, oriented stories that dealt with the gravitas of being a young man or woman at that time, and had the attitude of that kind of sensibility, and that's what you went for.
Yeah.
And it was a sea change in the business.
It was, and as a film fan, which I am, a film like 5 Easy Pieces, you don't see, or I don't see a lot of that anymore. And why do you think that is?
Because the film business has changed from a business that was a storytelling business, the best method of storytelling to audiences, young and old, but mostly young audiences, where their stories could be and their sensibilities could be reflected.
Uh-huh.
And mechanically, or I might say technologically, that was the way to reach that audience. And what's happened today is the confluence of all the digital natives and the digital technologies that allows that kind of product to be really easily produced and disseminated through digital fronts, whether it's Netflix or Hulu or Amazon or YouTube, has changed it. And so those kinds of films are not spectacle films. They're films that are emotional and they're personal and one-to-one experiences, and generally do well on small screens, iPhones, iPads, and the like. Whereas the spectacle films, today's Wonder Woman or Spider-Man or League of Justice or Batman.
You realize you're mentioning only superhero movies.
Well, that's what's happened.
Right.
All these big spectacle films today, maybe even as Dunkirk coming out or other films that require, tremendous budgets, big screens, become really event films. And those are the ones that seem to be achieving the maximum result at the movie theaters around the world. And it's true because you need a big screen and they're more communal in effort. And so that's the easiest way and best way to reach those audiences. And those younger people want to go to those films and see it in 3D IMAX or 2D IMAX or surround sound or holographic image or whatever it is. They want that experiential process, a campfire that's large with a big audience, and those films generated. So that's where and in the global market, that's what's happened too.
Right.
So why would you think that Warner Brothers, Fox, Paramount wouldn't hunt where the elephants are?
Exactly. And is that why what I and you both know as television has become independent film, essentially?
Exactly right. What's happened is the best writing has been on television. And so now to have a sequel, it took 3 years. Now to have a sequel, they do 80 episodes or 40 episodes all at once.
Right.
So you got sequel up to sequel up to sequel. And then it's like crack cocaine. You're habituated to it. And the good part about it is you don't have to be home at 9 o'clock. You can watch it anytime you want, binge watch it, 4 episodes at 2 in the morning, on a plane, wherever you want, download it. So now it's, it's available where you want, when you want, and how you want. And so it's the methodology is customer or audience-centric.
So you mentioned success with big films initially, and you mentioned the other bigger films that you were involved with. I'm sitting here and looking at your Golden State Warriors championship ring and your Dodgers pin. When did sports come into this, as far as ownership is concerned for you?
A long time ago,
Okay.
a long time ago, more than a quarter of a century ago. You wouldn't know that because I went into it easy. I went into it not easy to do, but easy. I was in minor league sports. I was the largest owner with Magic Johnson of minor league baseball teams, single A, double A, and triple A. There's nothing minor about it. They're huge investments all over the United States, big stadium builds. Running it takes every bit of energy and talent, maybe more so than running a major league team. But you're in the audience business, basically, with that.
Right.
And so I cut my teeth on that for many years and then had many failures trying to get into major league sports, basketball teams, hockey teams, baseball teams, where I failed. Couldn't get them. Didn't have the capital.
Right.
Lost in the beauty contest to achieve them, and finally, broke through. But so I paid my dues.
Excellent. And it seems like you had a similar history as Abraham Lincoln. Lose. Finally, a big win, right?
Well, I don't know about Abraham Lincoln. I know that success and failure are very close together.
Yeah.
One wouldn't think that, but they are. They're very close together. And the opportunity to stay in the game and gives you a chance to achieve the success you want, achieve the opportunity first that you want. And so you have to be baked by a lot of mishaps and failures and bumps and punctures and cul-de-sacs because that's part of the journey.
That's what helps you to ultimate success. I wonder, can you give us more on success and failure being so close together?
Yeah, inside of every success is the seeds of abysmal and painful failure. And likewise, the formula for success is, elusive and at best uncertain. Yes, we could say the Kodak is really talented management, great players, the right city, the right competition. That's all true, but the reality is, getting the willingness to confront failure is, if you're afraid of it, you're going to move farther away from the success.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be daring. You can't be risk. You can't be risk. You have to be risk. You can't be risk averse. I want to say it sounds like
too much double negative.
Double
right,
negatives.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you are risk averse, you'll move farther away from the opportunity for success.
Yeah, I wonder, as a minor league baseball owner, not the Red Sox but the White Sox, Bill Veeck was an owner who basically treated his major league team as a minor league team with all of his kind of promotions. Did you pay attention to him at all in what you were doing? Or
I absolutely did. I think that what he was he recognized it was called show business. It wasn't just called business. Nobody went to see a balance sheet at the ballpark or the hardwood or the ice. And so the idea was he was engaging his artists. He was engaging his audiences. And did he take chances that might have seemed to many people over the top? Yes, he did. But the idea that he recognized that people went to be engaged emotionally, and so he ramped it up. Now, did it offend some people who were purists for the sport? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Did it engage other people fully, and was it a conversation piece? You bet. We're still talking about him, and so the idea is not to think he's a clown, but to think he was imaginative and willing to take chances. And so I think that's been a part of everybody's examination. What are foolish risks, and what are real risks, and what risks do you have to take in order to find that success?
Fantastic. Again, we don't have much time, so 3 final questions. I'll tell you what they are. I'll ask you them in order. What has most surprised you at work? What has most surprised you in life? And on the soundtrack of Peter's life, one track, one song that's got to be on there. First things first, what's most surprised you at work along the way?
What is most surprising is the recognition that all glory is fleeting. That you get a picture that wins Best Picture,
Yeah.
or nominated for Best Picture Academy Award, or makes a lot of money, or whatever, and it's all good, but everybody calls it their picture.
Sure, of course.
The guy who was doing the projections, how you like my film, and the idea that if you try to chase the reward of acclaim, it's an empty calorie. You just have to feel it inside yourself.
What's most surprised you in life?
What's most surprised me in life is that how much of a trampoline effect failures have. That if you're not willing to stay and recognize that they motivate you to move you forward, they are in fact catalysts for advancement in your career. They are both learning tools and recognition tools that hubris is a dangerous elixir.
You like this failure thing. This works for you.
Well, it's not failure. It's the idea that that's where success lives, very close to that. And if you're not comfortable with the discomfort, you're not going to get what you really want.
On the soundtrack of your life, one track, one song that's got to be on there.
The theme for Midnight Express.
I mean, come on. Peter Guber, obviously a thinking man. Your bond is to the brand. You're in the audience business. You have to be audience-centric. That emotional transportation that happens during the experience is what bonds you to that brand. So it doesn't really matter what you do. You can use that information. Thanks so much to Peter Guber for his time. Thanks to you for yours. Stay tuned.